Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Little background on myself. Let's see. I'm 43 years old. Been in sales for 23 years. Grew up in northeastern Ohio, and grew up in family business, family-owned, Italian restaurants, and grew up, learning how to deal with all kinds of people, and raised by first generation family. And, my grandfather raised me on some core values that are centered around like respect, trust, pride, loyalty, integrity, accountability. And those things carried me through my early years into Ohio University, where I went to school, and got a communications degree. And we were one of the top sales schools in the country. So got a sales certification, and moved to Columbus, Ohio, and have been in enterprise sales and management roles for the last 23 years, and got a wonderful family, wife Stephanie, and daughter Ava. She'll be 17, and Nico's going to be 5, and Isadora is going to be 7. So we got a full house of kids and athletes, and the clock just keeps rolling.
Lots of reasons to sell, right?
Right. That's right. That's right.
Well, tell us about that restaurant. I take it you worked there as a youngster?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My grandfather, so my grandparents, my family's from Italy. My grandparents came over before probably around late roaring 20s, right?
Yep.
And they were tool and die makers in the factories, and grandfather did what he did best, which was cook. So, he owned restaurants all throughout his lifetime. And I don't remember being in his restaurants, but my uncle Junior learned from my grandfather, and my uncle Junior owned several restaurants that I grew up working at. And I'll tell you what, I learned that the world doesn't revolve around me at an early age.
That's a good lesson to learn early.
Yeah. And I think I learned, like, it had a lot of influence on me, and like just getting dirty and working, grit, having some grit. Right.
And did you do a lot of different roles? Busboy, dishwasher, waiter, everything, whatever was needed?
I came in as a busboy. By the way, I was like 14, 15 years old. So a long time ago. Yeah. So I was young, working in the restaurant, and came in as a busboy. And at the end of the night, they're like, well, you're going to go in the kitchen and do dishes. I'm like, what do you mean I'm going to do dishes? I'm a busboy. No, you work for the family. You're going to go do dishes. Yeah. And I was like, that's interesting. And it was a wake up call. So I did everything from, I started bussing tables, doing dishes. It was an Italian steakhouse. So, 200 person restaurant, lounge, 600 person ballroom, 200 person VIP room, steakhouse, pot, like all that stuff. Wow. Right. So, was a runner, right? I'm carrying those big steel trays with 6 things of double pork chops on them.
You can hear it sizzle.
You're weaving through the restaurant at, 15 years old, trying to save up money for a car when I turned 16. And, all my aunts worked there. It was a fun place where we worked hard. And then, you graduated up into like doing banquets. I got to be upstairs in the kitchen while my uncle's cooking 300 scrod and strip steaks for a high school banquet or a wedding, and got into that, got working on the line, started cutting meats, like doing all that stuff. Right. So just really got a good understanding of operations. I didn't know it then, but I got a really good understanding of like all the gears are required to make this thing work. And
you're not working for Red Lobster or some Ruth Chris, some chain or franchise. It's your family.
This is like Aunt Jean, Aunt Dolly, Aunt, like everybody yelling at me.
They'll have the X-ray machine. They know what's going on in your head.
That's right. That's right. And it became like, I worked there, on and off, right, for 8 years, right? So I was, out of college, right? I come home over spring break and they're not hiring, but they're like, Michael, you got to shift. Come on. Right. So, it became like home. So when I come home from college, my friends would, come over and we'd spend time there and I wasn't working there and just hang out. And, when you got a lot of history there, it just becomes, I don't know, it's part of you. Right. So that was a really good experience, like early on.
Well, that's great foundation. And I saw you had a couple of, the traditional tough sales jobs.
Oh, yeah.
And now enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that switch? Because, working for a big company, it can become kind of like a trap almost, in that it pays pretty well. You become pretty good. How do you get to that next level?
So in an effort to not, we only have 30 minutes, right? But it's a story, but it's a story, right? You want to talk about the story. So when I was at Ohio University, we had an organization called it's now called the Ralph and Lucy Shea Sales Center. And I was brought up, and this is back in the 90s, right? Under, Dr. Hersey's spin selling, right? Like that's what we learned in school. Hersey was aligned with the university and I was in the sales center. And what I figured out real quick is that, like, in life, like, opportunities are everywhere, but you have to go make something out of it, right? Like my daughter's looking at colleges right now and I'm like, Ava, there's opportunities everywhere, but you got to go do something with it to create your opportunity. So I was in the center and I realized the value of like mentors and all these wonderful mentors. And I won this award called the Fair Unfair Advantage Award. And I had an advantage. It was a fair advantage, but it was unfair. I had that advantage, but I went out and got it. Right. So what I figured out quickly is I did an internship at Cintas Corporation.
Yep.
Okay. Great company.
Right. I know.
Great company. But I learned what a love them and leave them sales model was. So their sales model was go out, get new business. And that's what you do all day long. And then your service sales representatives pick up ongoing expansion. And I was like, I'm a relationship guy. That doesn't sit with me. So through the sales center, a guy named Bob Axeline, I went and worked for him the next summer in Marlborough, Massachusetts. 12 employees, spoke 20 languages, technology business. And I learned real quick, I don't want to work for a small company. So I made a decision. I want to go somewhere big with the best training in the world, because I understood the value of underlying like sales training that is pumped into your bloodstream and it becomes you. So I went to Xerox Corporation when they were arguably one of the most relevant sales organizations in the world.
Yeah.
And I had the pleasure of learning under Ann Mulcahy, who was the CEO at the time, who was phenomenal. So I went to the Xerox School of Sales Training, and that decision, right? My first experience at a university was the best decision I ever made, because Xerox gave me this like foundational methodology and process. They call this thing the buyer-focused wheel of selling.
Yep.
The first 50% of the wheel, you don't even talk about you, right? You fact find, you validate, you magnify, right? You see if somebody wants to do something about pain. If they do, you help them set criteria, right? Usually their criteria is price and you want to get here. So how do you flip the script, get them to focus on outcomes, right? So like, I got really good experience calling on state, local, federal government, public sector operations, moved into a specialist role, right? So you had to learn to lead and deliver results through others without having authority. So think of it as a co-prime, like you have this product stack that you have to drive sales execution through 10 or 15 salespeople in a multi-geo region. How do you do that? Because you can't do everything yourself. So I learned how to be a leader without authority to deliver results, so that when I had authority, you didn't need authority to lead, right? And that's a learned skill set. So that then put me in an opportunity to go into enterprise software with BEA systems.
Yep.
And that's when I learned that the role I took out of school into Xerox was the only advertised sales position I've ever had in my life. The BEA thing, the job was created for me. We got bought by Oracle. I went to Oracle for 3 years. And I was in a co-prime role, and I was like, this isn't me. I'm a relationship guy. So I went to Cisco Systems. And that's where all that experience went to the next level. And, they gave me the 4 worst enterprise accounts. Said, good luck. Go figure it out. That's when I learned to sell through a channel. I'd never sold through a channel, always sold direct. Spent 7-8 years there as a global, working for our global enterprise group. Right. And that's really where a ton of maturation occurred just from a global perspective. And I got tired. And I ended up making a career move 4 years ago to leave like the big company world, leave the Fortune 100 and go work for a small startup out of Boston. So right now I work for a company called Mark Forged. We R&D engineer and manufacture a closed loop 3D printing solution that's redefining manufacturing and solving a lot of the supply chain challenges you see today, right? Providing the ability to print at point of need versus traditional legacy processes. And it's fun building something.
Physical. Yeah.
Physical. Yeah.
After dealing with software for a number of years, right?
Yep.
What would you attribute your success to?
That's a pretty open question.
Well, the knee-jerk reaction is hard work, but most people work hard. And then relationships, but then most people have pretty good relationships. There's typically somebody really double downs on something.
All right, I double down on a couple things. So I have this thing called the mantra. Everybody at Mark Forged, if you're on my team, I created this mantra as an outcome of just like I had to, like when I moved into this leadership role, I was like, I got to find a way to create something so simple that no matter what situation anyone's in, like you just tie to the mantra. Like these are our core themes. This is how we do business. So it's the mantra, right? And what the mantra is, it defines how we operate. The mantra is 3 things. You're empowered, you're accountable, and you're customer focused, right? So everything we do as an organization is customer first, customer focused, because if your customers aren't happy, you're not selling anything. And if you're not selling anything, you have shareholder impact. So take care of your customers and take care of your workforce, because if your workforce isn't happy, your customers aren't happy and your shareholders aren't happy. The second thing is my boss for 7 years at Cisco, one of the greatest people I've ever met in my entire life. He used to have a t-shirt hanging behind his desk. It was a blue t-shirt, had white writing on it, and said, "Hope is not a strategy." So I would always walk into his office, we'd be strategizing something, and he asked me a question. I'd be like, because hope is not a strategy. He'd say, yeah. So I brought this into this. I said, look, hope is not a strategy. If it's not on paper, it's not real. So if you're not documenting your sales process with your customer and constantly playing back, you and I both know 80% of the gig half the time as an advocate is selling internally. Where's your pitch? Because somebody different enters the room. And if you're not ready, aim, fire, you're wasting time. So the second part of the mantra is hope is not a strategy. If it's not on paper, it's not real. The third thing is have a plan, work your plan, and execute. My first manager of sales operations, Gina Smith at Xerox Corporation, said that to me at an early age. She said, have a plan, work your plan, and execute. If you want to be the king, wear the crown. Let the organization know what you want to do, what you want to aspire to be. Don't do it in an egotistical way, but have a plan, work your plan, and go, right? So like, I don't, as you hear those things, like that's what I lean into is like the mantra, and that's how I operate. And it's done well for me because any situation I enter on a daily basis.
Core principles. Yeah.
Core principles, right?
And would you say that the opposite of that does not work? If you don't have a plan and you wing it, which most salespeople wing it, right? They're like MacGyver. Throw me into a situation, and I'll tell you how I get out of it.
Yeah, I think that to be in that 1% where you're at club every single year for your entire career, that doesn't, luck is not involved there. Now, could it happen once? Yeah. I know a VP had said, Mike, career growth and development is about performance, luck, sponsorship, and timing. You need 3 of the 4. I kind of buy into that. You do, right? Sometimes you have.
Well, right. Because you only have control over, you don't have control over luck. You only have control over yourself and what you do.
That's right. Building sponsorship. So I think that there are people in sales roles that on paper have huge success year 1, but they get that shark tooth performance, right? So I don't consider those results skill, right? Like you have
good timing, good luck, good, got a good account.
Sure.
And why did you just choose to go into leadership?
So this has happened to me in 2 companies. When I was at Xerox, I realized, and by the way, greatest training, leadership development ever. I believe it's the core of like why I've been successful in my career. There's a difference between management and leadership.
Big difference.
So you said, why'd you go into leadership? Brian, I've been in leadership my whole career.
You wanted to?
I want to lead. So at Cisco, I had, 2 large global accounts. I was in a client exec type role, right? But I wasn't manager of people. I was manager of a business campaign across the globe, 7,000 locations with stakeholders and constituents all over the planet. Yeah. Because I learned how to lead without authority. I was a company leader. I was a leader with the customer, and I was able to lead teams like internally and externally to push the customer's agenda forward. Right. So like, there's a difference between leadership and managers. Say, why'd you get into leadership? Because I think critical mass, if you can take the we not me approach and get the village behind you, that's how you get stuff done anyway. Right. I can't do everything. Right. I need my product. You got to have people from product. You got to have marketing. You got to have, support and technical services and senior sponsorship. Right. So if you can't do that, it's kind of hard to succeed on your own. Right. And I think that, I think that's something a lot of people miss.
They do. And especially when you went to, I take it Xerox was a matrix organization the way Oracle is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I got exposed to that too. And it's kind of weird because you're like, who's this person? Why are they hitting me up?
Yep.
How do I get this person to do this if they don't work for me?
Right.
That's persuasion. Right. And it's leadership. It's like you're doing it for your own best interest. Let me explain why.
Yep. Absolutely. I don't know if it's, look, persuasion, I think, has a negative connotation.
Can be. Yeah.
But I would say to go back to the original question, I think that success is also built on one who seeks diversity of opinion, one who's a curious listener and information seeker. And if you can build consensus and be decisive and be an effective communicator, people follow. Like you get common goals and you collaborate internally with your partner community, with your customer, and the momentum just goes, right?
As opposed to being a know-it-all.
Yeah. And look, I'm big on EQ and emotional intelligence and self-awareness, right? I love to teach that. I've gone through that in the last 12 months where I was, there was about a 3-month window where I was the biggest tree in the forest casting a shadow because I had the answers. But what I've learned is sometimes you have to take a back seat and maybe ask questions to help draw the answers out. And I've been doing this for 23 years, and sometimes we have to reteach ourselves those skill sets, especially in a small company where you're moving fast. And we need to make decisions and go. So I think what I've actually found is slowing down, taking a nap, going to work out. Like, I'm more productive, as crazy as that sounds. I had to teach myself that again this past year, right? Like,
well, it's especially in sales. We feel like if we're moving, we're being effective.
Right.
That's not necessarily true.
Mm-mm.
Because certainly what you're selling, it's much more of a cerebral activity than it is a back-breaking activity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thinking through why the other person would care and want to be a customer.
That's right. Like, not only our industry, but our tech stack, we haven't crossed the chasm yet. We're in a push market.
Right.
I can tell you, I've closed $100 million deals that were, I'm not going to say they're easy. They're 5-year sales campaigns, but equally as challenging to do a 100K deal in the space we're in now.
Yeah,
right. Like,
definitely.
the world doesn't know what they don't know. Right. So like, and to do something that's truly like transformational in a legacy industry that's smokestacked and it's just been stamping
Right.
stuff out for, 100 years, it's really hard.
And what was that adjustment like? Because you go through, 2 huge or 3 huge brand names, where they may not know what you do at the company, but they know what the company does.
Right.
Very different. Then you go to this new space that's physical product, smokestack, customers, new idea.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, I knew exactly what I needed in my life. Personal impacts work, work impacts personal, right? So like, I wanted to build something. I wanted to take all this experience, and I didn't know I wanted this at the time, but I, like, dumb luck, found it, right? Like, what it means to be part of like a mission-based organization with founders. It's so crazy cool, right? Like, never experienced this before. And once you get a sip of that wine, you're like, I'll take the whole bottle, sir, right? Like, please, I'll have another glass. Because it's now it's like you get up every morning. I can't wait to go to work. Like, I get up every morning, I'm like, all right, here, we're gonna get this today. Because it's like you're building to get to the next step, to take a $50 million company to a $100 million company, $100 million company to 200 million, to 200 million to $1 billion company, right? Like, that's the thing we're on. So it's to build, it's to earn while you're doing it, right? So to have like ownership and stake, right? Like, into what you're building, and also to grow. Grow something, grow as a professional, like, teach people, like it. There aren't a lot of people that can leave the global enterprise, like you said, because it's so good. It's so good, but it's,
well, you know it, right?
Yeah.
And if you're effective at it, it's like, maybe you'd go to another one, a Salesforce or AWS or whoever.
That's exactly where I was talking to both of them when I was looking through.
Of course you were,
right? Why would you not? But here's the thing. Here's what I learned. If I'm as good as I think I am about taking care of customers and helping them achieve their hopes, dreams, and goals, right? I'll be fine. Might have to take a little step back to take a step forward. But you got to be willing to take that step. And what this has taught me is that I'm willing to, I'm so open to risk, because there is no downside. There's no downside.
Yeah.
None.
But why not like a startup, like a series A, B, somewhat enterprise, but not super enterprise, where you could maybe run the North America or.
Yeah. So I don't have that answer. I don't know, but what I can tell you is, I gotta be careful here. So like, I was with my financial services customer in San Jose with John Chambers at Cisco in his boardroom. And the CEO asked him, hey, what's the next, 10 things that are gonna change the way the world, lives, plays, works, and learns. Right. And like the 6th or 7th thing John shared with the CEO and his leadership team was he started talking about 3D printing. Now this is back in like, this would have been in like maybe 2017. So John says that, and I'm like, he goes, I think the conversation went something like, imagine, if you will, when you come down in the morning for breakfast, you print this pill that is like optimized for your body and fills you up, and it ensures optimal performance of you for the day. Is it going to taste good? Nah, but over time, it'll keep getting better and better and better and better. Because we're on that whole like IoE, IoT conversation, right?
Yeah.
That is the only thing that stuck in my head that day. It's again, dumb luck stuff, right? So I leave that executive briefing, start looking at career opportunities, talking to an old VP I work for at Salesforce, talking to Amazon. It's the natural move, right? And I was just like, it feels the same.
More the same.
I got to shake this up. So a call from a recruiter on the West Coast, and she says, hey, I got this thing, got that thing. She goes, I got this 3D printing thing. She's like, but it's nowhere near what you're doing. And I was like, 3D printing? I was like, tell me more about that. And I remember John talking about, I was like, tell me more about that. And she names the guy who's the chief revenue officer. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, he like lives in Columbus, Ohio, like 2 miles up the road from me. She's like, yeah, do you know him? And I'm like, yeah, I worked at Cisco with him. I didn't know he was over there. Now I went to college with him. So he and I go to lunch 2 miles from our house. He puts a metal brake lever on the bar. I said, what are you doing? He's like, changing the world, changing the supply chain, right? Improving time to market for manufacturers, improving the world's supply chain, helping manufacturers, be more efficient, take costs out of the business. And he puts something physical, like you said, been selling stuff in the data center that I don't touch, hardware, software, professional services for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now I'm back to like old school Xerox, like business concern, feature, advantage, value. I'm like, you know what? Let's simplify the life. And I touch this thing and it's metal. I'm like, you printed that? He's like, yeah, it's 17.4 stainless steel. It's like got a honeycomb infill. It's lighter weight, but it still performs like a traditional cast part. And I'm like, tell me more. He's like, Mike, we would never hire anybody with your background because you don't fit the mold.
Right. Steep learning curve.
I got hooked. And it was just this odd thing that happened. It was the executive briefing, the 3D printing thing. She said something, I knew somebody, and it was just like, all right, I'm going to roll the dice. And I went there to build something. And it just happened. And it's been my experience here has been the most fun, the most rewarding. I love what I do. I love our team. Like, is it hard? It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. There are no, you work for the big company. You're like, oh, well, that's messed up or that's messed up. No, it's not. Like, the stuff's not built. Like, you're building the stuff. You're writing the business requirements, and you're like, you're doing 20 different jobs, right? And I think differently now, and it actually helps me with customers because I understand even more, right? Like how, look, technology, like you can buy technology from anyone, plug it in the wall, and you're going to get green blinky lights. But if you don't have the people in the process nailed around the technology, the tech doesn't matter. It's the people in the process.
And is the building your motive? Is that what lights your fire?
I think it's, there's a lot of things that light my fire, Brian. I think for me, it's changed a little bit. When I came here, it was very intentional to build, to earn, and to grow. Now I've achieved those things, like exactly how I wanted to achieve them. Now, the role that I'm in, I'm building something even bigger that can have like 2x impact with many zeros, right? If we do this thing right. So now it's like, okay, we built this, but if we could scale something, this could be huge, right? So it's still the same, but it's a different context. And
it comes back to like the family restaurant, because like if you're building something big at a an Oracle or an IBM, it's like, it's not yours, right? You're
Nailed it.
kind of, you're a passenger on the rocket ship.
That's right.
But if you're kind of one of the engineers on the rocket ship, and you designed it, and you're there every day,
Yeah.
the emotional attachment is so much more solid. That's what gets people about startups, is that, seeing the company picture every year go from, 5 to 50 to 500 to.
That's that connection piece I'd mentioned, like with our co-founders,
Yeah.
being like connected, like at the core, like this like spiritual mission bait, like it, I can't explain it because I've never gone through this before. Right.
Right. Because most of the big companies, you're a resource. You're not a person. You're not, you're just a resource. You're plug and play. You're part of the matrix. It all kind of works. It's good. Been there. It's fun. But when you're at a startup, you're building it. If something doesn't work, it's like the restaurant. You figure out how to fix it.
Oh yeah. And you're working with people that are absolutely the most brilliant people I've ever met in my entire life. And now I'm the old guy, right? Like I'm the old guy, right? Like all the stories. So, for the first 2.5 years here, we're on the road 5 days a week.
Yeah.
In every single city you've never heard of in the United States, just road warrior, hotel oatmeal, and going to the next place the next day. And it's the best time I've ever had in my entire life. Just going through that and figuring stuff out. Like, we don't have this. Let's go build this. So like the next wave of people don't have to build this because we've already seen it all. Right. So like being part of that, figuring the puzzle out, and like that's been kind of cool. It's been kind of neat.
It is. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you and learn more about your company?
Yeah, you can reach out for company, www.markforged.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Mike Cady, Cady. Feel free to reach out at any time.